Hi guys, this is Hassan, and in this video we will be implementing two-factor authentication on a Express-based web application. So on the right we have a browser window opened up, and the left we have Visual Studio Code with the code of the application. Let's look at the application first. Here we have login form where we can type in the user ID, the password, press enter, and we are logged in. We can see the login ID and we have a button to log out, and if I refresh, it doesn't go back to the login page because the cookie has been saved here, right? I can click on the logout button and we go back to the login page. Again, I refresh and it doesn't go back to the home page because we are logged out. The cookie has been deleted from the browser, as you can see here. So this is the base application. The code for this application can be found in the link in the description. You have a GitHub repository from where you can download the code and then run the npm install command and finally start the development server by running the command nodemon. So I suggest you have the application running on your computer and code along with me, okay? Or if you want, you can just watch me coding. So let's get started. But before that, I just want to give you another overview of the actual code for this application, just a base overview. So here we have the server.js file that contains the Express application. Here we have Express cookie parser, and then we are making use of an npm library, node.json-db. That's basically a file-based database where you can use a JSON file as a database, right? Here's a variable that gives us access to the database, and this is the name of the file, users, right here, users.json. And here we have the JSON file, and you can see we have the user1 with the password 123, user2 with the password 123, and another object inside of the user, which is 2fa, that gives us a variable enabled being marked as false. So we can see that two-factor authentication is not really enabled for either of these two users, and we need this flag in our database to let the system know if 2fa is enabled or not. Now you can use MongoDB, MySQL, or any other database if you want. This is not something that you would normally use on a production environment, so this is just for development purposes, just for the tutorial. Here we are serving the public folder to the user, and then we have three endpoints: the login endpoint, the check endpoint, and the logout endpoint. All of them are GET request. Of course, for the login, you would definitely be going for the POST request. But again, since this is just for tutorial purposes, I went ahead with the GET request, and I'm fetching the data from the query, right? Finally, the app is running on port 3000 and being served to the user. Now let's look at the HTML file. In the HTML file, we are making use of jQuery and Bootstrap, our own styles and our own scripts as well. And we have two top level div elements. One has the ID login page, the other has the ID home page. And we don't have a separate HTML file for the home page or the login page. Both of them are being served using the index or HTML and conditionally being displayed or hidden depending on if the user is logged in or logged out. Here we have the scripts, and here we have the CSS file. So that's the overview of the application we have right now. Let's get started with implementing two-factor authentication. Okay, we will be starting with implementing 2FA now. I'm already logged into the system using user1 credentials, and you can see that we have the logout button. Underneath the logout button, we will be adding the new elements to enable 2FA. Let's start with adding a divider. Now what I'm going to type here is bootstrap classes, all right? And you don't necessarily need to know exactly what these classes do. Here we have the divider, and now we will add a div element that will contain everything regarding the 2FA, and it will have the ID of 2FA box, a few classes to make it into a flex element. In this div element, I will add a button with the ID enable 2FA, but then that's gonna do exactly what the ID says. another div element with the ID 2FA form holder. And finally, inside this div element, we will have the image to display the QR and the form to update the two-factor code. This image will have the ID QR image and the height and width of 150. So one thing I want to just say is that the way I'm typing the HTML is weird to you. Just know that this is the simple way of quickly typing in HTML with a few advanced code editors out there. I'm going to remove the src and alt attributes and then add the form with the ID 2FA update form. And it doesn't need the action attribute. In the form, we will have a text input for the code and the button to submit the form. So here we have the image, which is empty, the input for the code, and the button to set the code. By default, I'm going to hide the image and the form, and we can see that this is wrapped in the 2FA form holder. So in the CSS styles, I'm going to set the display as none. Perfect. Now let's go into the scripts and add a click listener on this button right here. When I click on this button, I want to fetch the QR image from the server and display the form, right? So for now, we don't have the QR endpoint ready. We're just going to display the form whenever we click this button. So for that, I'm going to make use of CSS. I'm just going to give a class of ready to the 2FA box, the div which is the parent of the form. And now let's make use of CSS so that whenever the parent has the ready class, the two-factor authentication form holder will be displayed with the display property of flex, because that is the actual display we want. Refresh, click here, and perfect, it's now being displayed. Now the time has come for us to work on the server to fetch the QR code. So let's move on to the server.js, and here under the login endpoint, we will create the new endpoint to generate the QR image. A try catch statement. Success false in case of an error. All right, now we already know that the cookie is being saved, and in the cookie we have the ID. We have the ID and we can fetch the user from the user database, basically from the JSON, using that ID. I know it's a bit weird with this slash coming in, but this is just the way that this library works. Node.json DB. This right here is a separator that we need to use. Now we have the user, and we will be creating a secret for the user, which is necessary when using two-factor authentication. That secret will be created using a special library from npm, and we will also be using another library to generate the QR image. So let's install those two libraries with the command npm install QR code and OTP lib, and press enter. Now I'm going to import both of these libraries. We need the QR code. And we need the authenticator from OTP-lib. My bad, it's OTP, not OPT. We have the packages installed and we have the code written to import QR code and authenticator from OTP-lib. I'm going to close the command prompt and head back to the QR image endpoint. Let's start with generating the secret. Const secret. The secret is generated by a function provided by authenticator, which is generate secret. Let me just close the sidebar. And once we have the secret, we need to create a URI. The function for it again comes from authenticator, which is key URI. It needs 3 parameters. The first one is account name, which will be the ID of the user. Now we have the issuer. This can be anything: the name of your website, the name of your application, the name of your organization. So in our case, it's just going to be 2FA tutorial. And finally, we need to pass in the secret, which we just generated. Nice. Now using the URI, we will create the QR code. The function is toDataURL and URI will be passed inside of it. In simple words, we will get text out of this function that can be interpreted as an image. Now we just need to send this image to the front end with the success flag as true. But before we proceed with this, we also need to save this secret on the database so that we know that we are trying to set the two-factor authentication for this specific secret. For that, we need to save this with the user in the 2FA object. And let's just call it temp secret because this is just a temporary secret. It's not finalized. This line will now save the JSON file with the temp secret. Okay, so that's all we need to do to generate a QR image for that specific secret. And let's head back to the scripts inside of the enable 2FA button function. Inside this function, and let's type in response is await fetch. Now we are fetching the data from the QR code endpoint, and let's convert it into JSON. And from the JSON, we will get an image, if you remember. And a success flag. So in case it's a success, we're gonna proceed with the code. If it's not, we're just gonna alert the user that we were unable to fetch the QR image. Now, in case we are successful with the GET request, we will set the QR image as the src attribute of the QR element right here. And that's all. Now I'm gonna save it, refresh the browser, click here. Okay, so it's not working. Okay, this is the reason it's not going to be QR code, it's going to be QR image. Save and refresh, then click here, and finally we have the QR image that's loaded on our screen. And if we head over to the users.json, we can see the temp secret. And if I click here again, it's going to update the temp secret and the QR image. Perfect. But as you can see, it's not enabled. Now we need to implement the code to set this temp secret as the secret of the user and set the enable to true. Let's get started with that. I'm going to head back to scripts, and here I will add a submit listener for the form, for this form right here, 2FA update form. I'm going to fetch the code from the form and then send the code to the server. For that, we need to create yet another endpoint. Let's continue on with the server and create that endpoint. It's gonna be for set the 2FA app.get set 2FA. Let's fetch the ID from the cookies. And if you remember, we need the code from the client. So that code will be coming in from the query object. Now that we have the code ID, we can also fetch the user. And from the user, we will get the tab secret. So now all we need to do is check if this secret verifies this code. And for that, we have another function from Authenticator. It's called check. Okay, so this function right here is going to do that work, and verified will be true in case the user has provided the right code and false otherwise. So in case if it's false, let's just throw false. In case it's verified, we are going to continue and just set the user's 2FA as enabled and the secret as a temp secret. Finally, save the database. And then return a success. So this is all we need to do to set the 2FA. Let's continue with the event handler in the case of form submission. We have the code, and let's make a request to the server. Okay, so we get this success property from response, and if success is true, we're going to show an alert letting the user know. Otherwise, we're going to tell them it's an error. In either cases, we need to reset the form, meaning that we need to clear the code, which is a simple single line. Save. Perfect. Now let me refresh and give it a random code. Click on set and nothing happens. So when I click on set, it is neither giving me a success or an error. I believe it might be another mistake. Let me just check the server, and it seems like I missed the slash right here. Now that I have done that, I can click update here again, and it shows me unable to update or unable to FA, meaning that it's actually working. Now you can open up your smartphone, your Authenticator application, Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, or any other, and scan this QR code. You will get the code, and you just need to tap the code here. I'm going to use an application that I have on a Mac, which is the Authenticator application from the App Store. Click on plus, and this tries to scan the QR code on the screen. I'm just going to take it over here and it scans the QR code we have on the screen. It mentions 2FA tutorial, account name user1, and the secret right here, which is same as here. Okay, just gonna click on save, and we have the code right here. Copy it, and it's actually gonna expire. So let it expire. We have the old code that I'm gonna try. It says unable to update, and I'm gonna try the new code. And it says success 2FA has been enabled or updated. As you can see, again, the user's JSON has been updated. It says enabled as true, and the secret has been set, and the temp secret is no longer there. In case I try to update the 2FA again, it sets the temp secret but doesn't touch the secret. It means that the temp secret is not active. We still have the old secret, which is really active. Now this part is done. Let's log out, and it's time for us to implement the functionality to verify login using 2FA. Back into the HTML, time for us to work with the login page. Okay, so in the login form, after the password input, let's add the code input, but it will be wrapped in a div element with the class of code. And I'm just going to add a small text to say, please type in the 2FA code. All right, so we have the new input, but the thing is that this is only going to be shown for those users who have 2FA enabled, right? In case if we open up the users JSON, we have user 2. They don't have the 2FA enabled, so for them it needs not to be shown, right? So this is just something conditional. For now, we are going to hide it using CSS. Perfect. And let's say when the login form gets a class of code requested, the code will be displayed. Nice. Okay, let's continue with the server.js. We're going to make changes in the login functionality, right? Now, after checking the user and if their password matches, we need to see if they have the 2FA enabled or disabled. Okay, so if the 2FA is enabled, we will also be expecting a code from the query. And we will check here if there is no code, meaning that we need to request for a code. And if there is a code, then we will verify if the code matches the secret of the user, just like we did when setting the 2FA. And in case it's not verified, we will just throw false, and this block here will take care of it. Okay, now let's run down the flow. If the user exists and the password matches, we see if the user's 2FA is enabled. If it is enabled, we are going to see the existence of code. If there is no code in the query, it means that the user needs to provide the code. We ask for the code from the client, and since it's a return statement, the code ends here. right? In case there is a code, it continues here and it passes the code into the authenticator check and checks if the code matches. If it doesn't matches, it throws a false. If it matches, it just exits the if statement and then it returns success as true to the user, setting the cookie as the ID. So this is all that we need to do on the server part's done. We just need to continue with the scripts on the client side and add the 2FA code in the login form. Now, if there is a code, we need to append it to the URL. And we will send the request on that specific URL. In return, we will get a success, an error, and now we will also check for a code requested. Here we need to add a if condition to check if the code has been requested. If it has been requested, we need to add the class code requested to the login form. And we need to return it so that the code doesn't continue. Okay, so that's it. Let me refresh 2FA here and put in the ID user1, password 123, press enter. It asks me for the 2FA code. I'm going to head over to the application I have, this, and type in the 2FA code 901377, press login. It says invalid credentials. It may be because the code expired. Let me try again. Yep, it says invalid credentials again. I don't know why this is happening. Let's just check. Okay, so there was an error which made this code not to work, and I just had to debug a bit and I found a small typing mistake. A lot of mistakes I make. Now that I have updated this, I can refresh 2FA, type in user1, 123 as a password, and then open up the application, the authenticator application. Here we have the code 574408. Press login and we have logged in. We can log out and try again. Five 574408, and this time I'm gonna wait for it to expire, and it has expired. I'm gonna try now. It says invalid credentials, and let's say if I type in the current code I have here, press login, we have logged in. So this works. Now the thing is that the 2FA code is still being displayed and we want this to be hidden, and we can easily do this by going into the scripts, and this check session always runs whenever somebody logs in and logs out. So over here we can add a few lines of code to hide elements using the classes we have. So let's get started with that. The base functionality has been achieved, right? So this is just extra work. But we need to do this for the users who don't have two-factor authentication enabled on their account. Remove the class code requested and remove the class ready from 2FA box. Now I'm just going to refresh and try again with user 1. It logs in. I'm going to log out and we can see that the 2FA is no longer shown. Now let's log in with user 2, the user that doesn't have 2FA enabled. It logs in without requesting for 2FA. So that's it. That's how you can implement two-factor authentication on your web application built on Express. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, do make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching my video till the end, and good luck with your development.